from Chicago. Today's book, Fantastic Vegan Teen Recipes for the Teen Cook. It's an amazing book, and somebody wrote something that I thought of. It says, I only wish I had this cookbook when I was a teenager, which is true. Elaine's colorful, doable recipes and gorgeous photography will make you want to try every dish. And that's absolutely very true. Elaine is the teenage recipe developer, food photographer, and author behind the popular blog Wandering Chickpea. Her work has been featured on popular websites such as Feed, Vegan Bowls, and Good Old Vegan. She attends UCSB as a communications major. And welcome, Elaine.
Thank you.
So let's hear it for Elaine. So first of all, if you can explain to everybody, especially YouTube audience who couldn't be here in the rain, what your book is.
Yeah, so it's just a collection of recipes that I developed kind of over the course of like 1 or 2 years that I'm not vegan, but like vegan cooking and food is something that I just really love. I think it allows for more like creativity and flavor, and just it's also great for the planet, which is a plus. And I like to just share recipes on my blog and in the book that kind of are just things that I want to eat and that I feel like I could just whip myself up and not feel like it's a major thing. And whether you're a teen or you're an adult at any stage of your life, I think they're all kind of accessible for vegans and non-vegans. And yeah, I think they're just supposed to be like accessible, good recipes for everyone.
When did you first have an affinity to cook? How old were you?
I grew up and my mom was always very into cooking. We didn't really eat a lot of like food out. It was always like family dinners. She would make us just home cooked things. She was always experimenting with like different recipes. She never really made up any of her recipes. It was always like from cookbooks and like online. So we had like a shelf of cookbooks that I would always page through and look at the pictures and ask her to make things. She taught me like, how to chop an onion and measure things correctly. And I think it started kind of at the beginning of the pandemic. I was bored and I think my mom actually suggested like, how about you start an Instagram account for just kind of the things you've been cooking. And at that point I was just like following recipes. I wasn't super into it. And I just kind of fell in love with like just making kind of whatever I wanted. And yeah, it really took off when I realized I didn't have to follow a recipe. And if I learned kind of just the building blocks of how flavor is created and just like the basics, you can kind of just go off script and do whatever you want. And that was like super freeing for me because I also have many severe food allergies. So a lot of like recipes online and restaurant meals and that kind of stuff I could never really enjoy. And it was always difficult to find recipes that I could have without modifying. So I never felt like I was getting the developer's like authentic intention. So I just thought I'll do it myself.
How did you find you graduate from following recipes to creating, and describe that process of you going through and coming into your own as a cook?
Yeah, I think it wasn't like a big thing, like it wasn't like an inaugural event, it just kind of happened. I think people get a little scared to abandon a recipe, but the thing is I grew up having these allergies, so I would have to do that anyway. I would have to modify any recipe I made, so I learned pretty early on how to make something taste good with substitutions and whatnot. So I think I just started experimenting just out of boredom, and I realized it was so much fun to make something that was new and original. And then it was even more fun when I got to post it on my website and other people would make it. And Instagram is so awesome because, you get to see like people would repost it and they would make their own versions and then they would modify it, and it's just it's a really great Instagram and social media, and just having the blog allows for like a really great community. So that was an aspect
You do have
I really
a big
liked.
following, and is there a lot of give and take with your followers and on Instagram and or
Like
communications,
interaction?
interactions,
Yeah,
and
that's something that I think that's kind of the reason I've stuck with it, is just for the connections I've made through Instagram, like with the people that follow me and just kind of rely on it for like weeknight recipes and stuff, but also just other creators. I've done like collaborations with other food creators and cookbook authors, and I've DM'd people and just made a lot of good online relationships that I didn't really think was something I would get out of it, but it's been a bonus. I really enjoyed that part.
have you interacted with any famous chefs or
Uh,
somebody you admire?
I wouldn't say famous, but Marina Bood, she actually wrote a little blurb for my book. I reached out to her. I'm a huge fan of her cookbook. She wrote Rosewater and Orange Blossoms. It's a really brilliant Middle Eastern cookbook, and I did get to meet her, and she's a lovely person. I love her.
Where did you meet her?
Actually, we happened to visit the same town in Michigan.
Oh yeah.
So we met up there, and she's really familiar with the cookbook writing process. So it was during that time when I was still working on it, and I was able to, ask her some questions about just what the process is like, and yeah. But I highly recommend her book. It has some great recipes.
Repeat the title again.
It's Rosewater and Orange Blossoms.
Okay. Great.
She's written other things too, I think, but that was my favorite.
So talk to me about Wandering Chickpea, and how did that come about? And what you went from Instagram and trading things, but you did this food and cooking blog.
Yeah, so I think it just kind of gradually, as I got more familiar with Instagram, I realized that most of the bigger names on Instagram also had websites, because a lot of people do it. They monetize it, and they make their own platform. So naturally that just felt like the next step. So I started my own website about maybe like 6 months after starting the Instagram account. And yeah, one thing that I just started accumulating followers, especially once I got into the photography side of it. Honestly, I love photography, food photography, about as much as I love developing the recipes, sometimes even more. I've always loved to draw and paint, and that was kind of just another way to be creative through food and cooking. So I think that was kind of something that made me stand out early on, is I put a lot of time and effort into making my food just look good. And I think that caught the eye of a lot of people on social media, so that was helpful.
I'm seeing a lot of parallels, with you creating dishes and photography and writing. And I was wondering if you had something, were your parents' influences in that regard, in terms of developing your creativity, or was there a teacher, or how did that come about?
I don't know. My parents never really taught me specifically about art and writing and all the creative stuff I do, but they were super supportive of it, which I think is almost equally as important. Like my dad they were just encouraging. Like they never put me down or anything about, and I jumped from hobby to hobby all throughout my childhood, and they never were like, stick to something. Like they were just like, try everything. And I did, and a lot of it stuck, so I owe that to them.
So do you see yourself in the future more as a photographer, or somebody creating recipes? And
Ideally both. I really don't see how my life could be absent of one of them, because they're both such a big part of my life. I just love the whole process of just thinking up an idea and then being able to look at it on a computer screen or in print, which is new this year and even more exciting. But yeah, I really love the whole process. Sometimes I'll even like work backwards and I'll think of kind of a more like artistic, like colors I want to use or shapes or I don't know, something I want to see in a photograph, and then I'll figure out how to do the same thing with ingredients, and like accomplish the vision I have in my mind. So I love that process, and I couldn't imagine doing it just in segments, you know.
Well, it really shines through your photography, your love of the colors and the contrast and everything. How did this book come about then?
Yeah, I was a senior in high school, and Page Street, which is my publisher, reached out to me.
Yeah.
Page Street Publishing, they're great. And they just said, we like what you're doing on Instagram, or we found your blog, like, would you be interested in doing a cookbook? And at first I thought it was fake, and I was like, yeah, no. But then I responded, and it took a little bit to get off the ground, but I worked with them that summer, kind of from maybe December to the end of the summer of my senior year of high school. I developed like 60 original recipes and photographed all of them, wrote everything. It was so much work, but it was honestly like one of the best summers of my life, because I was working like more than a 9-to-5 job every day, but I was so busy doing like what I love. So it was a great experience.
And am I right in thinking that you enjoyed photographing it more than you did creating it, or was there an equal parts joy for each? And
there were definitely recipes where either photographing or testing it were super frustrating.
Yeah.
I preferred one over the other. Like sometimes I just couldn't get something to look right, or like on the flip side, I was able to do exactly what I wanted, and it ended up looking really good. But I'd say it was a pretty 50-50 split of just enjoyment on both fronts. But in the end, I think I'm really proud with every recipe and photograph that ended up in the book.
it looks like you've chosen Middle Eastern, Indian, Asian, Italian, and was that like a conscious effort to be as diverse as you could in terms of recipe selection?
Yeah, there's a chapter in there that is like globally inspired recipes, and none of them are authentic by any stretch, but they definitely use flavors from other cuisines and techniques. And that chapter of the book was I had in mind that if teens or other home cooks that are maybe kind of new to cooking, I feel like that can be a really great way to just learn more about just cooking in general and how flavors interact and how different techniques like complement those flavors through just kind of more traditional techniques from other cultures. That was kind of what helped me. I read a lot of cookbooks from like Yota Motolengi is a really popular like Middle Eastern chef. He taught me some really great techniques, not personally, he was cooking. I wish, but and just other like Indian chefs and stuff. I think that's just a really great way to learn. So in a way, it was trying to teach others, but also employ the techniques I had learned in the past. So I just think it's more exciting too to incorporate other cultures.
Yeah. Did you have a few favorites that you really liked in terms of the recipes that you selected?
Yeah. There's this one granola recipe. They can vouch, they've had it. It took me a long time to get it right, but when I finally did, it's really addictive. It's good. It's good. And then for like dinner recipes, let's see. There's this really cool like tofu recipe. It's kind of like a butter tofu with a spin on Indian butter chicken.
Yeah.
And you freeze the block of tofu and then you thaw it, and it completely like changes the texture, so it's more kind of like meaty and like
Mm-hmm.
spongy sort of, and it absorbs flavors really well and gets
Wow.
super crispy in the oven. So I kept running into the problem where it would like kind of turn to mush if you like simmer it in like a sauce or something.
Yeah.
But the water freezes and it expands, and then it leaves these like air pockets in the tofu when it melts.
Wow.
So you don't have to press it for as long, and it has just this really different, interesting texture. So if you're not a fan of tofu, I recommend taking that extra step because it really changes the texture.
Interesting.
So,
Is
I like
that something you just discovered by accident or experimentation?
It's a thing. I think I read it on a Chinese blogger's
Yeah.
website. I did not come up with it.
Okay.
But I feel like it's one of those techniques that's not very well known, but it's so easy and it really makes a big difference.
Cool. All right, I'm going to ask the friends here, who wants to come forth and talk about her cooking? Any special dishes or anything like that?
Well, we have been living in the dorm.
Okay. So you can't do
we
that.
don't really have. I have a contraband air fryer in my dorm,
You have
but
that?
that's about it.
Okay. All right, I think your roommate, why don't you come out here? And what's your name?
Hi, I'm Nicolette.
Okay, Nicolette, talk about Elaine's cooking.
I remember, so like she said, we have a contraband air fryer in our room. So I remember one of the first weeks of moving in, she made like a miso salmon dish in the air fryer, and it was like the best salmon I've had in my entire life. And
Really?
it was really good.
I had this
really
idea
good.
in my mind like early on that I was gonna like keep up my blog somehow living without a kitchen.
Uh-huh.
And that was one of the early attempts. It was chaotic, but apparently it tasted good.
It was very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I gave up on that after about like first quarter. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna wait till I have a kitchen next year. So yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So you never got caught then with the air fryer or anything like that?
Well, maybe
by
now
the
I will. Hopefully our RA doesn't watch this.
Does anybody have any questions for Elaine about recipes or cooking? Did you have any questions or anything? Well, go ahead.
For anybody starting out with cooking, say you're a freshman in college and you've been living in the dorms, and now you have to kind of support yourself, aka next year very soon. Do you have any tips for techniques or easy ways to kind of dip your toes in the water?
Let's see. I would recommend just finding a recipe that looks really good to you and just learning how to make it, because usually, like, even if it's not like simple or basic, just getting good at one recipe can usually, the techniques in any recipe can usually be applied to other ones. So the more you practice, the more you'll feel comfortable. I think for me, I remember I made this like chicken biryani recipe when I was just starting out, and it was like the hardest thing I've ever done. But then I made something else and I realized I just felt so much more comfortable, because so many of the techniques carried over to just other aspects of cooking and stuff. So it's all interconnected. I know like it feels overwhelming to just look through cookbooks and feel like you can't do something, but once you have the basics down, you get going.
Great.
Yeah.
And
Thank
you'd
you.
recommend that initial recipe probably being from your book?
I mean, sure. For it.
Have you guys tried any yet?
We've been a part of the granola.
Oh yeah?
The granola is very, very
The gr-
delicious.
Okay.
Granola has become like a form of payment.
I
Oh, yeah.
overindulge on the granola.
The granola?
Cookie granola?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So good.
I dabbled in the granola world. Nothing like it. Like,
Okay.
That's,
Oh really?
Oh yeah, no, it's really good.
That's high praise indeed.
Thank
You beat out granola world. How does that make you feel, man?
Probably the best I've ever felt.
Are there any other questions before we?
No,
Well, Elaine. Oh, go
I
ahead.
wanted to say that I did make the chipotle barbecue mushroom tacos
Yay.
with the charred corn salsa, and it was excellent.
Wonderful.
So you had it published in something.
Yeah, I think yeah.
Yes, you got that one published, and I made it. It turned out
Yay.
wonderful.
That's
All
so good
right.
to hear. Thank you.
Well, you're on your way. And what's next for you? I mean, other than your sophomore year at UCSB after summer.
Yeah. I kind of took a little hiatus from developing recipes for my blog, so I
Yeah.
definitely want to get back into that. Hopefully, within the next week or two, because I'm going home at the end of this week, so I want to get back into it.
Yeah.
And I would love to do another cookbook at some point because it was really fun. But that is more. I think that's farther out, maybe post college. So it might be kind of hard to balance the two. But we'll see.
Do you have an idea of what you might want to write about? What kind of cookbook? You might wanna do?
I mean, I feel like every recipe developer's dream is to just write a cookbook with recipes, just like have no theme, you know, just kind of be able to do whatever you want. I'm sure I'll end up doing something a little more niche, but I'm like I said, I'm not vegan. I love plant-based eating and stuff, but I would love to incorporate maybe some more non-vegan recipes. Mostly for me, and just because I learned a lot just through developing those recipes. I feel like so well versed in a lot of vegan cooking techniques now, and I kind of want to do the same. I want to branch out to like non-vegan techniques and stuff just to learn a little more. But yeah, but I'm keeping an open mind. I'll do anything.
Well, we'll have to wait, but in the meantime, congratulations on your new book, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.